brave or whatever. You know, so it's like any one of those heart channels is like a different type of competition that can be brought out in a person. And so when you only have one hanging gate there, it's like there's only one type of competition that you would inspire in someone else, you know. Meanwhile, you can pick up on all kinds of competition in others. But
it's the only person I've ever felt incredibly competitive with, and I can feel her just like
that person has a supercharged heart. That's crazy.
I know, right?
That's nuts.
She's intense. Yeah, this is the only person who I've ever seen like I could physically feel her getting so angry if I was like winning.
Wow, interesting.
Someone who identifies with her mind, like she's like that is like her trait is like I'm smart. I'm always the smartest person in the room.
Really,
and so she loses, whereas losing. She won't admit it, but I can feel it energetically. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I can never do readings with people in person. I've done so many, but I just, I like want the least information possible about their life, so I can just do the reading. Like, can I see your chart?
Yeah.
Because the thing is, it's really hard. The more it's like I know you, it makes it harder to do the reading.
You don't know a lot about it.
It gets in the way. Yeah, but it does get in the way. I see what you meant by holy penta. That's penta, right? That's let's see if we can. Yeah, that's some penta right there. These are the pentagates there coming out of the G center, and you have 6 of the 12 pentagates, and you have 5 of the ones of the G center pentagates. 5 of those 6 are right there in the G center.
Filling half a penta by yourself.
Sounds alright.
And the 1333, it's always. Demonstrating, proving you've really been there. See, for those who aren't familiar with Penta, as Ra likes to joke, oh, hola desde San Salvador. Oh, that's in San Salvador. Feliciano. Thanks for tuning in.
Yay.
And, but the Penta, as Ra likes to joke, you know, people love looking on other planets for aliens. You go no farther than your own family, because your family is already organized as an alien. It's organized, there's an alien organism called the Penta, where everybody acts different. You notice the moment you're around the family, everyone acts different? The moment you're 4 years old again, you know, have you noticed, like, the more you get installed back into something, and it's like you never left, it doesn't matter who you are, it has nothing to do with you. You're just a cog in the machine that is Penta, right? So you just become part of Penta, and see, here's the interesting thing. You have those pentagates, but really that's just what you contribute to the penta. Because we're in a penta now, and penta works as this vortex or this swirling thing which has this kind of come hither finger that pulls at the gates. It's like taffy, or like you know, you can imagine it pulling the taffy of your gate. You have those G center gates, then I have access to it, Jenny has access to it, Mike has access to it. Now for the upper penta gates, the ones from the G center to the throat, people who have those channels, such as actually both of you have those channels, those G center throat channels, the 731 and then the 1333, that you do typically play that role. You play the role of the leader. You are that, as opposed to just lending that energy to somebody else in the penta to play that role.
Oh, good point.
However, from the lower ones, and this is what Rob points out, he says there's a very key difference. The lower 3 are the more necessary ones, and because they're more necessary, well, it's not in a bad way, but just the penta's not going to work, especially that 214, which right now we have 14. Actually, we have 214 in the transits right now.
Yeah.
Just temporarily, you know, for a little bit, but we've had the 14 8 nodes. But in any case, having that that 214 is necessary for a penta. A penta cannot survive without 214. It's the most necessary channel.
Oh.
What's interesting is for all of those sacral G-center channels in the penta, anyone can perform those functions as long as someone has them. So I have 2946. Without 2946, there's no commitment. The penta doesn't keep getting back together. It doesn't show
like
up for
hit
Sunday
workouts.
breakfast. Hit workout or this. And it really has to do with my commitment, my 2946, and my ability to condition others through that 2946. A lot of times I'm out of aura when I'm working out. So I'm not really participating as much. I'm kind of standing off by myself. And I'm not
That's
really...
very true.
Yeah, so, you know, I'm not lending my 29 to it, and then people are leaving. And but that says something about my commitment to that too, because if I'm not in it with that, yeah. So
Why is it necessary to have 214 channel in the pentas?
Why is the 214 in the penta?
No, why is it important for it to work?
Because it's the material one. You'll see that the individual, it's right there in the middle, and it's not that the logic isn't important and the abstract isn't important, but The logic and the abstract are kind of, Penta is a vortex. The vortex is in the middle of the G center, and things are siphoning into it. But the siphoning of the arms and legs coming off the penta is very different than the central column. And in fact, the 214 doesn't really continue up to the 8-1. It's a vortex going in. The 214 is really the center column, and the 8-1 is some demonstration stuff.
Cool.
That's more part. It's more similar. It's like the 214 stands out as unique and distinct from its arms in a way that the top three don't. The top three are kind of a unified front of three different forms of demonstration. So let's just look. I didn't know we were going to do a penta class, but let's just do it. Let's do a penta class. So here's the intro to penta, and then we'll get to some of the fun stuff. This is all pre anyway.
Do you know about something called the Trident?
Of the penta?
Yeah.
That is right. So that's
It's like called the Trident, right? Or something where it's like the.
That's the symbol of the penta, really.
The Sphinx, yeah.
And the symbol of the Sphinx, as well. So it is.
The handle is the 214.
Yeah, exactly. So the Trident, so the cross of the Sphinx has, 7, 1, 13, and then it has 2. And the handle goes all the way down to the 14, really. So let's just talk a little bit about penta. Where does penta come from? Well, the first thing is, you start to learn about it, and you start to watch the pentas organize, and this is a penta. Anytime you have more than 2 people, you're working with penta, and you start to notice it organize, and then the question is, what keeps that penta together? What is the penta really there for? What did it? Because you can see there's so many temporary pentas. They kind of stick together. Like you go to a party and you don't know anybody, and you find a little group of people, and then no matter what, throughout the night, it could be a huge party. You all end up finding each other again and again and again. You can notice that the next time you're there, but you might never see those people again. So there's not necessarily a glue in every penta. I mean, pentas are kind of continually fighting over penta members. There are penta representatives who have come to get their member back or make an intervention on behalf of the penta. I'm not kidding. This is how it works. Think about all the families that have sent their emissaries on various missions and so on for the family, for the pride of the family. There are groups of pentas that we call wa, where they are assembled into groups. In fact, some families are was. If you have, or some are not quite was, they're proto-was. It really depends how many people are involved in that family. The Y is when you get up to 16 people. But what if a family has 6 people? Well, then you just have 2 pentas, and you're going to have 1 penta, and one person's going to be left out, and they're going to be excluded from the family, and they'll admit in candor that they don't actually feel a part of that family. Right? This is what's going to happen. Or there'll be 6 or 7 people or 8 people, and it's going to be split, and there'll be 2 families. 2 families fighting over the same resources. Oh my word. When I was about to buy a house here, I was looking at this amazing house, and it was so cheap, but it wouldn't sell. And it turns out the reason it wouldn't sell, when I got there, somebody had rammed their truck into the gate, knocking it over. Now, it turns out the history behind this family was that there was a fight over who actually owned it in the family. Really cool house, but it was very hard to buy when one person listed it really cheap as a power move. But it wasn't really one person then. It was one penta fighting against the other penta. The family was split down the middle, and they each had members of their family. So you see it's so much stronger when there's pentas fighting against each other. What's Family Feud? What's any of these 1970s game shows where you get one penta against another? Let's see them compete. I mean, that's what the plot of a lot of survival horror movies is, Let's see which penta makes it. There'll be the separatist penta and the communalist penta, or there'll be this one and that one, and the fight of the pentas. So what it really comes down to is we were all born into penta. I mean, pretty much, except for those of us who were born only in the aura of the mother, which is extremely rare. Almost everybody's born into the aura of at least one more person besides the mother. Because you have your aura, she has her aura, but as soon as there's a third person there, it's penta. So we're all born into penta. The moment we are born, we are in penta. Now, the most stressful time for any family is the first kid. If you're going to have kids, just have 2 kids. Say there's a single parent.
Do the doctor's aura? Like the
Yeah, even the doctor will count. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, anything creates a penta aura. I mean, you know what I mean?
Start picking out your doctor based on their chart.
Well, but usually you're being born into a family. In most cases, the woman is in a relationship with someone, or with, if she's single, with someone else like a mother or a friend, or you know what I mean? There's usually another aura. Yeah, there's just another. Well, and I even mean in a long-term sense, someone that they're living with or staying with. Now, there are a lot of single mothers who are just on their own with just their baby, and that does happen. That absolutely does happen. And I'm not going to say anything's good or bad, how lucky they are to not be conditioned by Penta, or how unlucky to not have the sustenance that Penta provides, because Penta is about material sustenance.
There's so much wisdom that you can gain from being in a penta.
Well, you can gain the wisdom of, oh my god, I want to shoot myself if I spend one more second with this penta, but you're not going to gain you're not going to gain wisdom from the penta, because the penta is a machine. The penta only has 3 centers, and it's there to program you and to make into a cookie cutter. And if penta was a way of waking up, people would be awake, because penta's you'll see as we go on, I'm not bad-mouthing penta. I know it sounds like I am. The penta gives a lot back. The penta, it giveth and it taketh. What it taketh from you is your uniqueness, because you see, the penta only has a G center, a throat, and a sacral. It has its own uniqueness. The Beatles were unique, but John couldn't explore his solo stuff when he was part of penta. Neither could Paul when they were part of penta. Neither could George. He wanted to go his direction. I mean, it's beautiful what they were able to do.
Didn't a penta like that kind of wake people up? Aren't there some people that were woken up?
Is there wisdom from that penta, is what you're asking? Yeah. Well, I mean, the penta is a machine. So the penta's there. It's almost, if anything, the individuals were able... It's interesting, because there's also the alpha, and the role of the alpha, which Ra talks about as he himself has been an alpha with regard to pentas, is to employ the penta to achieve a vision. And it's very much an individual, unique vision. And the way the Beatles worked, and you can see it in that amazing Peter Jackson doc that just came out. It's incredible, based on 60 hours of behind-the-scenes footage. People have their song. They say, George, you got your song. And he goes, okay, here's what I want you to do. And he's in charge of everything, complete division of labor. And then Paul's in charge of everything, complete division of labor. They just give the reins over to the person whose job it's going to be. And, I mean, the thing is, you have to have some interaction in the world of pentas. We have a penta here. I mean, I can't badmouth them too much, because pentas want to materially survive. And I've been looking at founding and attempting to found the Santa Fe Human Design Library. We've obviously founded High Desert Human Design, where we've thrown very successfully the HDHD conference, and then the follow-up Winter Respite. These are very penta-oriented things. And to do that, you have to be a penta among pentas, and you have to be able to work within the penta. But at the same time, just because we have a penta channel, you have a penta channel and I do, it doesn't mean that it's like the moment you're away from the penta, you don't care about all the stuff you care about when you're in the penta. And I'll give a few examples, because I think it might be a little bit hard to see, because it's just so ubiquitous. It's one of those things where, if you've ever done psychedelics and looked at cars and been like, wow, they're all like faces, man, and they're all... That's penta, because no human really cares that much about cars. Have you ever looked at sports teams and been like, wow, they're just people beating into each other through whatever, you see some sort of aesthetic view of sports, and then you go, how the hell does this work? You go, well, that's penta. I've been doing some stock market stuff. You see the throngs of the masses out there, and you see the waves and crashes. That's penta. There's no human that really cares about this stuff. No human cares as much as the penta cares, right? We can't be bothered to care that much. We are the awake ones. Penta is headless. It has a throat but no head. It's like 5-centered beings, like dogs. They'll bark at you, but they won't put it together into a logical story, right, or a sequence. But that's how penta is. So just to really quickly go over them. So you're born into the penta. The very hardest thing is the 3-person penta. And the moment you're born into the 3-person penta, there's a tremendous amount of stress. The highest amount of divorce is among single kid, So you have 2 parents, and they have 1 kid, and then the parents split up. And that's because it puts a tremendous amount of stress. The second you have 1 kid. Now, when you have 2, it balances it out. Think about how hard it's been. Even better. No, it's not better. It makes no difference at all. But when you're think about when you've been in a 3-person group, and you're like, I can talk to you, or I can talk to you. I can talk to you, and I can ignore you like you don't exist, or I can talk to you, and I can ignore you like you don't what are you doing? You're only talking to one or the other person. Then you leave, and what happens? The moment you leave a 3-person penta, the penta's no more. The moment I leave and go in the other room, you're still a penta. You're like, man, Jonah's on one tonight. What's he doing? You're hanging out. You're in the penta. The moment a 3-person leaves, the 2-person is like very different. The penta falls apart. Now we call it compromised tension. It's not that it has its own tension, but what happens is the tension releases through the compromises between the two people. So it's very rare to not have compromise with somebody. And when you have compromise with somebody, that becomes what you gripe about with that person. Anyone know what compromise is? Sorry, I know you guys know. I'm just, you're like, I'm just doing a little class.
I'm going to fail.
People are watching though. Maybe they'll be from the audience. Oh, volume please. Oh my word.
Oh, you're getting the bots again.
Okay. The volume's not working, huh? Okay.
Hey, Jenny, can I borrow a pencil or a pen?
Yeah.
Or is it up there? Oh, cool. I think mine fell out of my book. Thank you so much.
Okay, apparently this microphone just doesn't work unless we talk into it. So we're each going to have to talk into it. This was the same thing we heard last time. So we're each going to talk into it. And some poor souls out there who had the volume extremely loud are going to be very bothered by my sudden loud voice. But I apologize for that. Thank you, Marcus Scond. Thank you, Born Roller. Currently, the Penta is unconscious, but come 2027, some children born will be conscious Pentas. That's when it gets interesting. Don't talk when we're talking, please. Yeah, it's just, we're on, a little professionalism, Okay, 25s love cars. That they absolutely do, Born Roller. Okay, way better, Becky. All right, we are going to talk into it. I apologize. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, Clara. Oh, my God. Thank you. Well, that was all kind of anyway. We're going to wrap up the Penta stuff and really get started, but I will kind of wrap up what we were talking about. So the story of Penta is really the story of a family, and everyone's family. If you're the firstborn, there's a lot of tension. You don't remember it because you're a little baby, but there's a lot of tension that goes on with when the firstborn. And I've seen it happen with friends of mine who have been couples, and then they've had one kid and then had a second kid. And it's amazing the difference having a second kid. Sometimes they make it long enough and don't have the second kid, but having a second kid really takes the stress off. And having a third takes the stress off even more. I mean, really, to maintain the population of any area, you need more than 2 children per family. You need 2.2 children per family, actually, because those children won't necessarily, they'll die before they have give birth and so on. So what ends up happening is there's a tremendous genetic pressure to have over 2, or to at least have over 1 kid. If you have 2 kids, there's a chance that you actually replenish because you're a couple. You and this other person have replaced yourselves. This is a tremendous genetic imperative. Now, what the Penta does, it's really here to just dominate. And when you see like examples of large groups that just completely dominate, whether in business or whether in ideology or anything, you can see Penta at work. You really see how Penta works, and that what Penta cares about is not what people care about. Penta doesn't have a solar plexus, so Penta has no shame. Penta doesn't have an ego, so Penta doesn't get threatened or make threats. Penta doesn't have, it doesn't have any of these things. Penta doesn't have tribal circuitry, so it has no loyalty. Penta is absolutely
No pressure.
Penta has no pressure either. Right, exactly. Good point. It's the sacral to the G to the throat. And it doesn't have, Penta is a completely different thing. And, I'm not going to spend too much more time on it, but I'll just kind of wrap it up to say, looking at some of the channels of Penta in the context of Penta, the 214, for instance, which, is activated now and has been activated a lot recently for people who have gate 2. We've had the nodes in 14, which will continue to be, or the nodes in 14.8. That's all about the material. That's the wagon loaded down by riches. This is the material sustenance of the Penta. If you don't have that, your Penta's just not going to have money. And then you have the 2946, which is the commitment, and then you have the 515, which is the sort of habit or the pattern that you can repeat. They all act as glues in various ways. And what's interesting, those bottom 3 are from the sacral to the G. Those are the so-called Tantric Channels. And those are about the material transformation and about really that's necessary for the Penta to be able to do its material work there. But then the top 3 channels from the G to the throat are actually how the Penta shows itself to the world. And that's really funny because you look at the 8-1, it's nothing like the 8-1 for the 9-centered being. The 8-1 for the 9-centered being can be as unique as you, as a person. But you look at the 8-1, and this is my point I was making earlier. Sorry for the quiet sound, but it was about the cars and how all the different cars are like slight variations on a theme. Then you look at houses, and they're all slight variations on a theme. You come to Santa Fe, you have 7 shades of beige. It's cute. It's not that Penta's not cute. It's cute in the way bugs can be cute. It's alien. It's different from us. It has its own taste, its own aesthetic. The 8-1 for Penta just wants to show that Penta's different. So they say, well, we do things differently around here. We aren't like those other families. We do things different. We're an offbeat company. You ever notice all the offbeat, West Coast companies and stuff where we're not like the other. We're so different. Yeah, we're so different. And that's Penta. That's Penta different, not human different. Not everyone is different. Jenny's slogan and company. But it's the same. I mean, you can look at any of them. So look at, you're a 731. 731 is kind of like Leonardo DiCaprio in Don't Look Up, getting recognized for his logical and also the other character, and the logical scientific predictor who people are skeptical of, but certain people recognize them for, what I mean? That's how it is as a person. But what is it as a Penta? As a Penta, this is all about demonstration. You have to realize if the bottom 3 channels are all about the Penta making the money and doing what it needs to do and selling and buying and doing all of the interactions in the world that are necessary for the material sustenance of the Penta, then the top 3 are really all about how that Penta demonstrates to other Pentas. And what is it demonstrating? Well, on the logical side, on that 731 side, it is demonstrating discipline. So you ever notice in the movie where the bad guy hits or kills one of their henchmen as a sort of proof of discipline? That's Penta. No human cares about that. That's the Penta that wants the proof, the demonstration that you have discipline. You go over to a kid's house, you go over to family's house, and their kid is and they say, go to your room. That's because the Penta's there. They're going to demonstrate to the Penta. No human really needs the other person to go to the other room. As a human-to-human relationship, you're not really invested in that. The moment it's you and one other person, you're talking with them. But the moment the Penta comes around, it's demonstration time. We're going to demonstrate. And I get caught up in it. I mean, I get caught up in the WA game, which is working with multiple Pentas, and that's really tricky. If you ever get 16 people together in a room, everyone assumes that one person is going to be responsible. So this is Bystander Effect. This is what happens where people watch things happen and they assume somebody else is going to be responsible. This is the kind of stuff that happens when you're in a group. It's really interesting. So, and then just to kind of finish it out, the one that you have, the kind of, Penta channel, you have the 1333. That is the abstract leader. That is the collective leader who gets the experience and then becomes the leader once they've had the right amount of experience and stays the leader as long as they have until they've had too much experience, as Ra jokes. Then they're too experienced to get rid of them. But this is the experiential leader. Well, what is it as the Penta? You ever notice in the Penta, people always have to document and prove that you've been somewhere, demonstrate what you've done together, demonstrate the event. There's always the company outing. There's always the kind of family outing, the family trip. Well, the 2946, which I have, is going to go out. That's the one that's going to go out for sure. It's my role in the Penta to take the Penta out. We're going to go on a Penta adventure, and I am the one who... But at the same time, just me being around, because of that come hither finger I was mentioning, where the Penta acts as a sort of swirling vortex, where there's this finger pulling, or hand pulling each gate into each other's auras. We all have access to them, and for the lower 3 channels, that is from the sacral to the G center, those channels... we all kind of can partake in. Everybody goes out on the 2946, if you know what I mean. We all work hard with the 214 to make the money and so on. But it's the top 3 where it tends to be, it still is shared to a degree, but it tends to be more role-based. Well, what it is for the Penta is to prove that you've been somewhere, to take the photos, to have the stories to tell, to come back with it, to say, here's when you were 4, and you always, you go back to some, family reunion. There's always somebody who has a photo of you when you're 4. That was what, Ra would joke about, was that the last time he saw his, family, he's been through so much, he's lived so much. And then, well, here's you when you were 4. You will always be 4 to that person. It doesn't matter what you've been through. You can talk to the voice. You'll still be 4 to them, That's what Penta does. It's not looking at you. It's looking at what you did. And it's also what Ross said is it's not even about you. It's, see, we were a family then. This is proof. This is a demonstration we were all together. This is a demonstration when the penta, it's like an emissary of the penta. Like, I am here to remember, never forget this penta. This penta was a thing. So, okay. Thank you all so much for watching. And Feliciano, yep, my first wife and I separated soon after our first son was born. It's such a huge stress on pentas. 3-person pentas are very, very stressful. So, all right, well, we have some fun stuff in store. We're going to talk about love cards, and we're going to... Oh, yeah. Joyful projector. Hey, Jen. When they take a picture and say, for posterity. Yeah, exactly. To prove that the penta was real. I mean, we all do this. We'll be. It's funny. You see the personal interest, and then you see the penta, and I think at a certain point it can be disturbing to look at penta, but it can also be, you can kind of laugh at it, how cute it is. Just as a side note, when I visited the Carl Jung Library in New York City, highly recommended, amazing library. They have a little bulletin board in the hallway among amazing, books in the middle of everything. And on the bulletin board, they have a thumbtack with an original letter written by Carl Jung sent there that's been tacked to that board for 50 years, and that's penta. And they're demonstrating and proving that Jung knew of them and approved of them and wrote them a nice letter. And they don't care who sees it, and it's not done in a personal interest way. It's done in a penta way, but it is really sweet. And they were very group oriented, and I get caught up in it too. I mean, that's the kind of the fun part is like, if you come to a human design event that we have, obviously they're going to be penta events. I'm not like, you can't be anti-penta or anti-wa and have an event. You just have to accept that's what it's going to be. So it's really interesting to observe, because some people who really are at a point in their deconditioning, you could say, where they maybe just can't stand penta, or they can't stand wa, or they feel so weird about it, they might not want to be in that. But at the same time, it can be, it's not like you lose yourself. I mean, you get stuck in the penta, and then the moment you're free from the penta, you go, oh my word, how did I get, have you ever been like out with people and then you just can't extricate yourself and so on? I mean, all of these things happen, but it's not like because we're in human design that somehow we're immune to penta. I mean, the moment we all get together, we're in a penta. And then if there's more people, if it's a wa, you get all of the effects of the wa. And the effects of the wa are very, very homogenizing and very conditioning. So it's not like, oh, you get into human design and you're so above it all that you're like, I'll never go to an event. I'll never be around people. Some people might. That's fine if that's your thing. Maybe that's really cool experiment to see what happens if you actually break free from a lot of that. But I don't think it's just people that have penta channels that kind of exist in the world of penta. I think it's more just you can laugh at it. You can take a step back and go, wow, do I really care about this? Or is it just, I've been in startups. Startups are so much about pentas. I was in Techstars where we had 10 different pentas. They would not allow a company with more than 5 co-founders. Most were 3 to 4. They really liked 3 and 4 person teams. They didn't like 2 because things can get deadlocked. They didn't like 1 because a person didn't have much forward momentum on their own. But you get 3, very dynamic. You get 4, you can still get deadlocked, but it's a chance you'll get 3 to 1. And you have 2 chances to get 3 to 1. So you can so it's an interesting dynamic, and you see this competition among pentas, and it's just the way the world works. It's not that you wake up to it and you fight it. I like when James Hillman was asked, so are you against the modern culture then? And it's kind of like asking a human design person, are you against being, homogenized and stuff? And it's like, well, yeah, but then to be against it is just as homogenizing. So I like Hillman's answer. He said, I stand slightly askew to the daily round. It's it's a little bit of a different kind of answer there. Oh, Jen says, the conferences felt like the cleanest wa I've ever been in. Well, thank you. Yeah, it was really nice because, I think there are just certain awarenesses that go into having a fruitful penta and or wa experience. And I think it's also when people are kind of, aware of those dynamics. What Mike likes to say is, it's not that the moment you get 6 people in a group, it's terrible. It's just, it starts to circle at the surface and it can never progress. And that's something I never heard anyone else say, actually, that you're the one who pointed it out. When you have 1 penta, when you have 5 or less, you can go somewhere. There's 4 of us, we can go somewhere. We can go anywhere. But the moment you have 6, unless you're all just watching one person talk, there's no engagement. The moment you're engaging with 6 people, it doesn't go anywhere, because then it just kind of circles at the surface. So I think when you're aware of things like that and of those interpersonal dynamics, I think most people who are into human design would just walk away from that penta. And in fact, that's what most people do, even if they're not into it. That's the kind of natural repellent quality. Yeah, it'll break up into little groups, or people will kind of move around. Or the one thing that I kept doing at the first Human Design Conference was really adamantly fighting against the sitting in a circle, because I would see that people would periodically organize the chairs into a big circle, and then everybody would be sitting around watching a single person talk. And then they would later complain that that person dominated their attention. And I kept moving it. I wanted to put up walls. I was trying to enforce 5-person max, because if you're in a 5-person max group, it's impossible to dominate that group. You can try, but it's a penta. That penta's going places, baby. It's taking you with it, or it's kicking you out one way or the other, but it's moving, and you can't just keep it, and there's these different pentas grumbling. They're like, should we leave? And the other pentas are like, I think that group's going to leave first. Let's beat them to it, But, so you see that the as soon as you get a big group and you all have to watch a single person, then the pentas all have to secretly conspire how to escape, and it doesn't work, and, so it's okay, well, we're going to get started with the real thing that we've prepared, that Jenny has prepared, rather, which is the journey around the wheel. And I just love this. You can follow her on Instagram now. Every one is different, but it's every _1 _ different. It's really, it's really fun. She's doing the journey around the wheel every week. And let me put it on here. Oops. Okay, and I'm gonna pass over the mic in just a moment. We actually this week, well, now we're in 49-1, right? Mm-hmm. And so we actually have 2 this week because they're only 5.7 days each, and so some weeks, depending on when it falls, it's gonna cover both. Hopefully, you can see those. We can be reading them out too, and kind of talking about them.
Yeah. And you can feel free to check it out on the Instagram. I'm just storing them there so you can see them kind of in their flashcard form, and then in a handy dandy little save a post, learn about a gate form. So we just finished up going through the sun just transited gate 13, which is the gate of the listener. And I think I just want to talk a little bit about the imagery. I had chosen a conch shell, and I looked up the symbolism, and there is kind of an array of different ones. But I really liked, this idea of, how it felt like it held a lot, like it felt like it held the ocean, right, with the sound, and you feel like you can hear, I really liked that connection of being able to collect memories and stories and experiences, because that's really what Gate 13 does. People with Gate 13, oftentimes, just people will shell all of their stories onto them. I've never told anyone this before. And they end up kind of being this historian of all these amazing stories. And what I think it really kind of culminates into is having this wisdom to be able to know when the right time is to share that story in whatever way that is, and kind of carry on the flame in that way. I was thinking that maybe it would be good with a brief overview of what it is if I read from the Rave I Ching. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would love it. And I just have a really short comment, which is maybe someone else out there knows which 2 centers it was, but I remember Ra referring to 2 centers as burning. I think the throat was one of the ones that's burning off the energy. It's basically, Ra would sometimes analyze charts by saying okay, if you have, say, the 1949 like you have, well, then does it connect to the throat? If it does, it's not going to build up. Or I guess it was actually the 55, the 3955. that it'll just build up in the solar plexus, but the moment it connects to the throat, it burns off. You know what I mean? It's continually burning off. It's like the oil well or something has like a flame at the top that's just burning. And I don't know what the other, maybe the G center or maybe something else was burning too. I forget. But there's something else burns as well. He said that the two, I mean, it's maybe someone else out there knows it. But at least the throat, and you'd mentioned this, and this is, of course, all about the G center to the throat. Mm-hmm. So that is kind of,
That's interesting. So that's the 13 is the flame.
No, the 33, right? Because the 33 is the throat gate.
Oh, I see what you mean. The top.
Yeah, the
top
actual
of it.
throat is on fire. It's using energy.
Beautiful. Well, as you mentioned, it is a G center gate, and it's in the sensing circuit. And it is like the end of the sensing circuit. We were talking about kind of like pulling up all the experiences. It's kind of a completion of the cycle. So this is what Ra has to say. Where the logic process demands a role for the self, the abstract demands that the self listens. This gate is the openness of the self in interaction. It is the gate of the cross of the Sphinx and manifests direction. In the logic process, direction is a projection through which the collective is pointed towards the possibilities of the future. This abstract process is direction through reflection and points out the experiences of the past. It's the gate of the listener. This gate will always attract others who will come and share their experiences. This is the channel of the witness and the completion of the abstract process. It is at the point at the end of the cycle. Here, the knowledge of the cycle is accumulated as memory. There is also a magic in this gate, for it is the gate of the hearer of secrets. This is the role of openness.
Yeah, it's so funny to hear, openness and with secrets. We also have 1222, which is the channel of openness. So it's interesting how Ra chooses some of these words. And usually, we might first jump to the conclusion that it's just a coincidence he chooses the same word, but it's almost never the case. Like if he talks about, I think it's, I forget which line, the third, maybe the third line of gate 55 is called innocence. And gate 25 is called innocence. And, there's connections there. It's one of the interesting cool things about human design is you get to keep kind of delving into the mysteries and uncovering the mysteries. Mike is great at it. I mean, it's almost like lore or something. Like some of the things you do. Like I remember one of my favorites was Mike was talking about how gate 10, which is the gate of self-love, among other things, occurs at the darkest time of year. So you were saying how because it's so dark then, the external light is so little that you can kind of see the inner glow or be more in touch with the quietude of the kind of beatitude almost of being in touch with your own inner light. So that's another interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, we were just talking about 13. Of course, you have not only this gate but this whole channel, and it is your definition as a self-projected projector. So it's the voice of I remember. And so when you find yourself saying, I remember when you did that, or I remember the last time, I remember this is all about, anytime you notice yourself saying those things, those I remember statements, that's something, you can pay special attention to and kind of notice when you are speaking your full true speech through the voice of memory. Versus some of the other voices where, like, for instance, I have the voice of I have, but if you don't have gate 45 and you go, well, I have to do that, that's not really you then. I don't have the voice of I feel. Ra didn't either. So he'd said if he ever caught himself say, I feel that it's blah, 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 he would know that it's not him and that's not the right thing. We have other voices that kind of temporarily interject into our speech. And we get conditioning from the transits and from other people. And we start to talk in a way that isn't us. And as a self-projected projector, it's really knowing I mean, I've heard, and I don't know if this is true, but it is at least said in human design communities that self-projected projectors are the projector that doesn't need invitations. I certainly wish some of them would ask for invitations, but in practice, they might not need them, because they are kind of like steamrollers who just go their own way. And what Ross says, you could be married to this person for 15 years and the next day they leave and you don't know why. What happened between this day and the next? Well, what happened is their G center pointed a different direction. It's a compass. It points towards wherever the magnet is drawing it. And for 15 years, the magnet drew it the same direction as you, and then it moved a different direction. There's no explanation. They're just here today, gone tomorrow. And that is the permanent aspect of being driven by your G center. That means that if you really are going to live your design, I mean, sure, there's some self-projected projectors who will prove to you with their undefined ego, a trait they all have in common, that they will stick around in a bad situation. But the fact is, if they're being true to their magnetic monopole, to their actual authority, they will go wherever it takes them, anytime it takes them. Everyone else be damned.
The tension is too much not to do it.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's just too much tension to not follow the direction.
Well, and you should be living your design. I mean, that's the funny thing is that then it would raise the question, is it easier for some people to live their design or others? I don't know. I mean, I think it's equally hard to wake people up. Some people might accidentally live their design. Like, it might be true that the self-projected projector, but just as many of them, I've always used my example of, and when we get to love cards, he's a 4 of clubs, which is my design card. My good friend Andrew, who worked at FedEx for years, and in the classic not self-projector of the not self-projected projector, we can say, that, he would just be miserable working like a super generator and doing all this stuff and then going, I want to quit my job, and I think my girlfriend wants to break up. I want to break up with her too. I don't know what I should do. I mean, I want to leave Seattle. I'm miserable here. I think I want to move, and I want to do this and this and this. What should I do? And that was just the classic. That's the classic. It's like a joke at this point. But, I mean, and he has found his way. I mean, that's the funny thing is some people, I do think there's a funny distribution where some people are easier to wake up but harder to get to live their design, and other people are already kind of living their design in some way or another, but really hard to get to wake up, and they're different things. They're different sides. They're the design and the personality. So, but back to 13, this is one of the only 4 possibilities for self-projected projectors. Because if you have the other ones, you're an emotional manifester or you're a mental projector, right? Right. So there really is only the 10-20, and then there are these verbal gunslinger channels, and it really is. Yeah, it's interesting the role that the 13 plays. And the other interesting thing about the 13, and then I'll kind of give it back to you to kind of go in depth a little more on it if you want, is that it is one of, it's from the Sphinx. It's actually one of our ways of getting direction in life, and it's one of 2 leadership channels. The Sphinx has gate 1, gate 2, and then gate 7 and gate 13. 7 and 13 are the 2 forms of leaders. Mike is the 7 leader. Lindsay is the 13 leader. So, and there's always going to be skepticism over Mike over his lack of experience. And there's always going to be the question of whether you've had too much or too little experience for your side. And then from the logic end of it, there's going to be, if people recognize, really Mike is here to make sense. Sorry, not to make sense, but to make predictions of the future. You're here to help us make sense of the past. So you're here to tell us a story about how we got where we are and what is our story together and our shared story. That's part of the 13 too. I mean, that 1333, that's also an aspect of it. And then Mike is here to say, hey, if we don't do this, that's going to happen. And if we don't conserve, we're not going to have enough grain for the winter, and those kinds of logical.
Getting into 49 already.
Well, I have a question. I don't remember what the other leadership channel.
You're going to have to talk it into you.
Well, it's not that big of a question, but for the 7.
You have to hold it pretty close.
Okay. This is close enough. Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me? This is so not. This is anticlimactic, guys. I'm sorry.
We're getting
Spam again?
We're getting spam again.
Boo. Huh?
I'm scared.
Of what?
This mic. Jonah and the mic. Because I think I have 7 too. Yeah. Okay, so I have 7. I have gate 7 as well, and everything that I read, it was like the 7s are actually here to support like the one who's like going to be like the CEO. Like they're actually really good as the supporting leaders. Is that correct?
Well, because the whole channel, I mean, the channel itself is the whole part of leadership, having the direction and knowing how to present it. And so if you see where the 7 goes to the 13, I think what you've been reading is, because you have a hanging 7 that you're looking for a 13. Then together you have that, we've been talking about 13, exactly. You're looking for a 31 as a 7. I mean, you don't really need it. There's less pressure on the hanging gates when you already have a channel there. But when a 31 does come along, they are going to create this sort of dynamic where you and them may together exhibit leadership, right? Of a different kind. I mean, Mike, see, what you were saying about the 7, the kind of question was, if you're a 7, are you here to support the CEO or support the leader? Well, Mike has the 731. So yeah, his 7 is here to support his leader 31, you could say, but really the 31 is just the figurehead. The 7's the power behind the throne. He has both. He is both. I mean, he has the direction. So it's kind of, if you have one or the other, you have the potential for the entire channel to come together. So someone who has a hanging 31, they just have the 31, it might say, you're really good at presenting or organizing or explaining logical arguments and at being really, presenting logical leadership. However, you need a 7 to kind of give you, see, we're all interdependent in our hanging gates, right? You need a 7 to kind of help you with the direction. Because that 31 might be up there and saying, we're going to renovate, we're going to change everything, we're going to redo it, make it more efficient. And then they go, well, where should we start? It takes a 7 to say, look, you're totally wasting your time over there. If you go spend over here, you're going to get twice the efficiency by just half the effort. And that 7 comes along and knows the direction to go and knows where to look and knows what to do. They just can't be bothered to sell it to people, They can't be bothered to explain it. So Mike has the whole thing, so he both knows where to go and is able to explain it. That is the whole kind of channel. But I think, that's what you were reading, and you'll oftentimes see things that are absolutely true for a hanging gate that are not true for the whole channel. That's very common. So
the channels are somehow more than the channels are somehow more than the sum of their parts, right? So there's something beyond a synthesis, right? There's something else. There's a third that is made when they come together.
Michelle Nealon says, without gate 33, this is back on the abstract side, without the gate 33, we keep the stories and secrets inside and private. Oh, that makes perfect sense, because it's with if you don't have the throat, or then maybe there's a transit every now and then.
I have gate 13, and I think that's true without the 33. I mean, I feel like a lot of cool stories are just like inside me that have just never come out because I never had the opportunity. Awesome. Well, something that I did last week that I thought was really cool was just quickly named the lines, going from the bottom up. And maybe you could, be able to track some of that throughout your week too. But so, line 1 of gate 13 is empathy. Then we have bigotry. I'm just going to read the note there since that's a kind of a hot word. The risk, always present, that fellowship can exist only for a particular type, whether racial, religious, national, or intellectual. Line 3, we have pessimism. Line 4, fatigue. The point of exhaustion eventually reached when one is too tired to fight. 5 is the savior. And 6 is the optimist. The ability to accept any limited interaction as a necessary step towards greater union. And I don't know, it's interesting just to see that progression of kind of getting exhausted from just the openness of taking it all in, and then realizing kind of at the end on the roof that, the ability to, accept limitations.
Well, I have a little comment there, which is just that the 13 is actually one of the role gates. When you study, for instance, in Ra's work on profile, he has work on the tribal versus the individual versus the collective masks that we have for people. Which is also interesting. It goes in that order. It's almost like a Maslow's hierarchy, where that's the order of the splenic binary to the ajna binary to the solar plexus binary. Yeah, 13 is part of the left angle cross of masks, right? So it makes perfect sense because 13 is part of what lends us our mask, and it's the mask of fatigue for the fourth line, or the mask of bigotry for the second line, or what are the other masks? I mean, these are all keynotes. Yeah, optimism for the sixth line. That's where it comes from. Pessimism for the third line. These are the collective externalization themes, right? And 7 lends the collective internalization themes, I think. But in any case, or sorry, vice versa. This is internalization, how we remember, because pessimism is meant to be. So here's just an example of how you could read these. If you're a third line, or if you're a sixth line under the age of 30. You're better off keeping your pessimism to yourself. It's not that you're not supposed to be pessimistic. Someone says, "Hey, I got a car for $1,000 and it's great." You can think to yourself, "Oh my God, they're idiots." You don't have to tell them. You don't have to tell them that. The externalizing the pessimism is one of the things that third lines do. They will oftentimes, because the roles get confused. Bigotry is an internalization theme of the second line. I mean, second lines need to keep that to themselves. Again, it's that there's going to be tolerance as the least offensive manifestation of bigotry, or the obsessive belief that the highest ideals cannot be embraced by the lowest forms. And this is what second lines kind of believe, the exclusivity of, at some deep level. Empathy. I have this one. I have empathy and the savior. So each of us have 2 of these. I'm a 5-1. So savior and empathy. These are both internalization. The moment I externalize savior, it's bad. You know what the savior is really about? Finding roles for people. This is masks. This is roles. It's about finding the role. So when I meet somebody, there's a scene, mild spoiler from 8.5, Fellini, one of the great films. We got to watch it soon. And there's just a beautiful short scene where it's following Marcello Mastroianni, the director, who's playing the director, kind of an embodiment of Fellini himself. And there's this old man who's working on the set of the film they're making, and he says, and the director's having the problem of finding how to make everybody fit into the movie. I want to have this, and I want to have this. And the old man says, "Well, I can do this," and he does a little dance, and he says, "You should put this in your movie." And he says, okay, old man, and he keeps going. And that's kind of what it is to be the savior, to figure out where that old man who can do the funny dance fits in your movie. And but that's an internalization theme. You don't want to necessarily show people that. You don't want to externalize it. You want to keep it to yourself. They say that to you. You go, okay, I can you kind of keep it in. For the first line, it's also the empathy. It's listening with empathy, not saying, "I empathize with you. I feel your pain." That was the classic. I don't know if Bill Clinton was 1-3 or what, but I feel your pain. Externalizing the empathy. It's not meant to be externalized. It's meant to be, to demonstrate. It's meant to be, you listen with empathy. You internalize with it. So, and so for Mike, he's the optimist. With the, I guess, bigotry, we need a better word for it. I'm usually against censoring these words. I think the reason Ra uses this word is because he wants to explain the first and the second line are deeply tribal. This is, again, like the first and second line are tribal, the third and fourth line are individual, and the fifth and sixth line are collective. This is at a fundamental level, despite whatever circuitry they have, this is just at some level. And so I think that's kind of what he's showing, is that all tribalism is exclusive and believes that their way is better than other people's ways. Whereas the collective believes the collective way is better than non-collective ways, but it's a little different. It's a little bit more like the Borg when you get to the collective. So, but in any case, you can look at these lines of gate 13, and you can see where the fourth line gets fatigue. That's one of its internalization theme, right? Is the fatigue that it feels taking in so much of the other and investing so heavily. If you have a fourth line, the 2-4, the 4-6, these fourth lines in your chart, it's impossible for you not to invest in the people in your life. So make sure you're with the right people, because then you'll be investing and it'll pay off. But it's impossible not to. You can't just be like, I'm just not going to invest. I mean, the sixth line in particular thinks they can, like a 4-6. It's unconscious, so maybe they're going to be aloof in a way. But the fourth line is still investing, in the sense that the fourth line is always giving to the point of fatigue to be the confidant to others, right? To be the kind of the person who's there for the others. The renaissance that comes with truce and its eventual reinvigoration. Openness which leads to exhaustion and the need for silence. That's the exaltation. It's just, but see, all fourth lines will get this, regardless. Yeah. Yeah. We have a couple more comments. Born Roller pointed out that Kobe Bryant was a 1333 and came out with a line of children's books. Michelle Nealon, my daughter is crossed to the Sphinx. Yeah, so she has this, and is that the right angle of the masks? It must be. Yeah, it is. It's the right angle, and then the juxtaposition here is the juxtaposition cross of listening. Should we go on to the 49?
Yeah.
Do we think? Maybe Mike, would you want to say anything about? Sorry, I don't know if it's it was very generator of me.
No, I would love to hear your take on 49 because this one is really interesting. For the card here, I ended up choosing. I was thinking about like making food for people, and over a campfire. Like that's just kind of the image that I got, and 49 is the gate of principles, or in the I Ching, it's revolution. And it's also nicknamed the gate of divorce or the guillotine, because it's everything needs to kind of line up with its principles, its values. And if, the other doesn't, gonna cut you out.
This one's so interesting to me because I have gate 50. I have my Pluto's there, and I'm all about values and sort of some form of values or principles, but 50 is so different. I mean, it's not. And I was actually inquiring if Mike is interested in reading the 49. If you're
reading the thing about it?
Yeah, and then just with commentary, stopping anytime you want to explain. For those who don't know, Mike has 1949.
Gate of Principles. This is the gate of revolution. At once pure energy and the capacity in the wave to reject, and at the same time potentially aware and ritualistically spiritual.
That's a mouthful. Ritualistically spiritual?
And it doesn't really make grammatical sense.
Wait, no, let's open this up. Okay. The gate of revolution at once pure energy, as well as being the capacity, I guess, in the wave to reject, and at the same time potentially aware and ritualistically spiritual. Yeah, this is a complete mouthful. This is a complete mouthful. Okay, well, I sorry for doubting you. That was you're absolutely correct.
Good prank.
Here, read the most syntactically confusing sentence in the entire baby.
In the design of mammals, this channel forms one of the 3 cross-species connections between animals and humans. Mammals and humans, really.
Yeah.
This is the channel of animism and the exaltation of animals as gods, as the root channel of the mystic way, of course. The 49th has the sensitivity to interact with animals and is the gate of the breeder, taming and breeding animals to ensure food resources. Revolution is the potential awareness to know what and whom is needed or not to maintain maintain or restructure the community. It seeks the support of the 19 in return for the guarantee of food, social access. On the mundane plane, sensitivity is the political left and the stream of instinct. The political right. The risk with the principles of this gate is the nature of the solar plexus. When determined by emotional energy, the revolution follows the wave of hope and pain. The hope of power to the people becomes the pain of starvation in the gulag. Damn. Oh, this is one of the channels of socialism, the 1949 and the 3740, the socialism stream.
And we have a comment from Born Roller, Lorena Bobbitt, who's a 49.
Oh, who's that?
The Bobbitt affair? You don't remember? You were a little bit young for that. Okay, well, people can Google it. It's horrifying. She's the one who mutilated her husband in a very personal way.
The guillotine.
Despite that, yeah, she guillotined him in a certain way. Despite that, it was reattached, and he went on to be an adult actor, actually.
Cool.
Franken Bobbitt a little bit. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. He woke up and she'd thrown it out the window anyway, of the car, I think, because she was driving away. Damn. They recovered it, and it was Okay, this one's gonna go a little bit. I always get asked when I do these, is this appropriate for children? I'm gonna have to click the box. I don't know if this conversation is
breaking the tribal bond in a really explicit way.
Yeah. Well, I definitely have seen the 1949 in action And it's really, I think, it really raises the question of how much clarity there is before and after the guillotine. Because I've seen where it's built up. This is the ultimate straw that breaks the camel's back. We always say that the tribal is the straw that breaks the camel's back, but like this is like the tribalist of the tribal for breaking the camel's back. Like build up, and that's when it makes the break. And the thing is, if the more fallout from that guillotine falling, the more that it causes decisions and interactions and so on, the more there's this grieving, this post-guillotining grief. You know, this is where jealousy comes from. This is like the jealous husband in a fit of rage and all that stuff. And it's not pretty, you know. This is where possessiveness comes from, and it is 19 is the gate of flirting, and we had 19 recently, right? And it was kind of funny. It was, you know, it's the other end of it, and the other end of the flirting says, "I will provide for you, and you will never flirt with anyone else ever again." And that's the scariest. Yeah, I'm collective, so I'm a little scared of that. But Jenny's tribal, so she teaches me. I'm becoming wise, going from foolishness to wisdom, as they say, one day at a time. But I mean, it's the 1949. I've always wondered if you don't avow your own jealousy, if it brings it out in others. You know, I've always wondered that. Like, can Mike, by being like super laid back, like make other people jealous? Like because somebody needs to give voice to it, you know. I don't know. It's just a little hypothesis. I'm not trying to pick on it, but I've wondered that because haven't you noticed that sometimes people will just, and it's also about how they deal with the chemistry. Certain people maybe have, like I have a completely open solar plexus. As not self, I'm just going to amplify whatever comes my way. So I might find myself getting really jealous and possessive around Mike, you know, as not self, amplifying that and kind of working myself up into a frenzy simply because, you know, I think at a fundamental level, what being an aura with someone is they're kind of getting you to produce, and you're getting them to produce certain hormones, certain neurotransmitters, certain chemicals in the brain. And it's also about the cleanness of Mike's emotional wave, where if he's really clear in all of his tribal attachments and really clear in all of his everything, he's going to be putting out this clean, very sensitive aura that will actually make us more sensitive. Like, I think Mike would probably be the best person to go, you know, to some sort of experience where it's like a sound bath or something, or like, you know, something that requires a lot of sensitivity. I was going to say laser show, but that's a little too crazy. But like something that requires attunement to sensitivity, because that is something that 1949 naturally imparts, which is interesting. It's interesting that. Well, it's interesting that they're in the political left and the political right.
No, that was just another grammatically weird sentence. It was comparing it to the 3452, the instinct.
Oh, so it's just saying the 5432.
Oh, yeah, 54.
Yeah. So I see. It's saying the mirror image was the right wing.
You're right.
So the right wing is the
that's the root
concubine.
of capitalism. Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
It makes sense. That's the right wing. Oh my word, that is so incredible. So for those who didn't follow that last part, the 1949 is really the beginning of the left and leftism and socialism, and then it eventually turns into communism through the 3740. The 5432 is the beginning of the right wing, and then through the 4426 channel of capitalism. And the 2145 is just money, totally agnostic. Money doesn't know any boundaries.
Monarchy,
We'll take from
technically.
Okay, I guess so, yeah.
It is. And it's
yeah.
funny that neither the stream of socialism nor the stream of capitalism ever reach the throat. So they're never realized. We never have capitalism. We never have socialism.
It never actually manifests.
We have this weird hegemonic monarchistic version of capitalism,
which both of them are subjugated under.
The 1949 precedes the 3740, which actually terminates at the heart, unless it's part of the mystic way. So in a way, you become leftist enough, and then it turns into individual circuitry. You become a mystic. You end up in the 1020 or whatever.
And it might terminate at the heart, but. It might terminate at the heart, but I still think that 2145 money line, I mean, because it's so material, it's got to be the outlet. I mean, like as I was mentioning earlier with the throat being the fire that's burning. Yeah, you're right. If the 3740 ends at the ego, then it's just building up there, building up.
Then it can proceed through the mystic way also.
Well, that's right. It kind of, so what Mike is referencing is that the leaving behind of the tribe occurs. The mystic way is really cool because it's 2 tribal channels and 2 individual channels. And so it goes 1949, which is kind of where we begin with mysticism, and this is very relevant to being in gate 49. Right now, this is where we were talking about during Gate 19, we were getting animal sacrifice and stuff. 19.5 is the line of sacrifice. Well, 1949 is part of that same early religious totem and taboo, golden bow style scapegoating and all this stuff with 19.
And participation mystique because of the sensitivity.
Oh, I never made that connection. Yeah, what Mike is saying is that because you kind of get overwhelmed, almost you lose your own individuality and become part of the throng of beating drums and dancing and all this stuff, almost because you're sensitized. You're sensitized to a different thing. I mean, everything that is more intense and louder and stronger and takes you away, right? It's so that's where religion begins. The 3740 is where we really get the church to some degree. I mean, what's interesting is the actual priests and so on, like in the Wa, are actually Gate 25, which is interesting. It's an individual aspect, the kind of role of the priest. But we do get sort of the structure that you belong to the congregation of the 3740. And then what Mike was referencing is that once capitalism and communism end up in the heart, kind of terminating there, it's not that monarchy through the 2145 is the only remaining choice of outlet. Actually, people start getting pushed out of the tribe in their individual way, and that's Gate 51, which, if you know about 51, is the courage to leap into the unknown, to leap into the void, to leave behind everything you've known, to leave behind the tribe, and to go into a strange new world where you're totally on your own. And that is that 51 getting pushed out of the tribe in through 25. Then you're in the G Center, and then you go from the 10 to the 20. And shout out to Teo if he's watching. We actually ran into him on the Santa Fe Trail earlier, and he wanted to join, but he had plans tonight. But he does really great work on the Mystic Way and Hero's Journey, and some of you may have caught his talk, which is available online as audio. You can look it up, Teo Montoya, the Mystic Way and the Hero's Journey, and it's actually on my channel on YouTube, and it's from the HDHD conference. But that goes more into the mystical side of it. Who's next for? We should do love cards soon, but do we have a little more on 49?
Oh, I think we kind of covered.
Okay, yeah. So if anyone else has comments on 49 or questions, we didn't go through the lines. Want to do the lines really quick, just to get ready for
Let's do that
for the week.
Okay. Thank you. So today we're in line 1, and it is the law of necessity. Revolution has no support unless it is perceived as necessary. The understanding and application of this law to maximize expansion of support and thereby ensure viability. All right, and then second line is the last resort. The determination to exhaust every possible peaceful avenue for change, and then, when satisfied that no other course is possible, to plan in detail before revolution is attempted. So we're getting ready. All right, third line, popular discontent. The ability to destroy antiquated forms once the restrictions have been removed. Then 4, platform. A political and social agenda embodied in guarantees to human rights that ensures a just and valued replacement of the old order. 5, fifth line, organization. Practical provisions for the needs of others in revolutionary times, which ensures support and continued understanding. And then finally we have 6, attraction, the power of revolution and action to expand its support. An innate impressionability that transforms the fence sitter into the committed. That's interesting.
Yeah, there is a really interesting thing I want to get Mike's feedback on. Maybe I'll pass the mic to you in a moment to comment. And this is something Teo said last week, just in our private conversations, where he was talking about the sixth line. And I mean, I have some keynotes for the 6th line, but kind of the normal ones. But what he'd said is that with the 6 lines in his chart, there's a reluctance to even do it at all unless it's perfect. That there's, if you're not going to do it, don't just, it's almost, why bother doing it half-heartedly, or why bother? It's the perfection of the soulmate, the perfection of the role model, of the stainless, of the, of unimpeachable integrity, all this stuff, sort of this theme of perfection. And that's something that I had never really associated to the 6th line. I mean, I don't do that in a reading. It's not like I say, and I would not say as simply as you're a perfectionist. I might tell an 1858 they're a perfectionist. I'm not going to tell a 6th line they're a perfectionist, not by any means. But it was interesting that, and I don't necessarily think that this is always the case, or that I do think that there's a sort of hypocrisy of the classic. That I always like to rant about the 7-centered 6th line that went on the roof and stayed there. That's sort of like the fantasy of like the dream of every 6th line is, there's one of us that didn't have to come down. He just like stayed up there and he was okay the rest of his life, really. And that's always the dream, because that is the ultimate hypocrisy, because it says, you all have to deal with being in life. I'll stay out of it. Thank you very much. You all have to go through the pain and suffering of having your skin in the game. I'm not going to put any skin in the game. And so that's the real hypocrite 6th line. The 9-centered 6th line is being called off the roof and brought down into the world again in their Chiron phase. Lots of them don't want to hear that, or they think they don't want to hear they have to go on the roof, and then they get there and they're like, this is amazing. Nobody told me I didn't have to. Really? This is what it's like? It's incredible. They never want to come down. And, but I do see how the perfectionism, it's almost like I don't want to come down off the roof because the real world's not as perfect. But I also see how there's the not self version of it, which is the excuse, the sort of hypocritical perfection of an impossible idealism that can never be appeased. So it's used as an excuse for everything. But also the sort of exalted, truly awake 6th line, which really does carry within it the potential for what is really perfect, in the sense of what is really appropriate for that, or what is really not making a mistake. It's not about trial and error. It's not about experimenting. It's not about any of that. It's about transcending all these binaries. Like, I almost wonder if, I always use David Lynch as an example of individual circuitry, but I almost wonder if it is a little bit of a 6th line thing too, in how he puts things in that are so perfect, but are so weird, and that are so unique, and that couldn't be anything else, and yet also are not practical, and they're not doing anything. They're just kind of, they had to be there because there was a certain integrity that had to be maintained. And he puts it in and goes, it's not perfect yet. It's not perfect yet. Okay, put that person away. Now it's perfect. The perfection of the scene coming together to be this perfect thing. So any comments on that? As a 6-2.
No, not really.
He's on the roof. He's on the roof. Okay. So, Jen says, oh yes, as a 4-6, I am much less resilient to mistakes than in my 3rd line phase. I definitely feel the need to be perfect, and my 1057 definitely plays into that. Yeah, perfected form. It's another form of perfectionism. I was thinking of the 1858, constantly improving, not satisfied, but, or just always trying to make it better. But yeah, that 1057, that's an interesting one. My dad has that. I know a lot of people, Yaya Pulalua, who some of you on Facebook might know because she transcribes a lot of. She's doing the good work. If people ask me what's God's work, I'm like transcribing raw lectures that have never been transcribed, that a lot of people don't even have access to sometimes. And so she's doing that. She's a 1057.
Is 1057 still integration, or is it individual?
Is the question, is it integration or individual? Yeah, it's one of those interesting ones where it's part of the centering circuit. And so I guess
1057 would be spleen G.
Oh, not centering. You're right. It's not centering. It's perfected form. It must. I mean, I always call it integration, but yeah. So, and then it. I've known a number of people. I've actually known a couple of people who've had that into the centering circuit. That's where I got the conflation. Like Sabrina Monarch, I think, has 1057 into 2551, and so it's kind of like shoot, like it kind of gives a interesting one. So, Born Roller, quite fitting with much ado about Russia invading Ukraine and China taking over Taiwan and NATO being mobilized. Yeah, well, that's also some cross-planning stuff, and I don't think we're going to get much to any global cycle stuff. Maybe we can do that. We've been teasing that we're going to do that, but yeah, all of these things are relevant in different ways. On the one hand, war is a symptom of the defined solar plexus, and then all the undefined solar plexus not self-amplifying it as a motor to make decisions. So peace will only ever truly be possible when the solar plexus can no longer drive decision making. But I wouldn't really want to live in a world like that anyway. And then Jen says integration is part of individual circuitry. Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. Is that I mean, there's some peculiarities where Ra will say things like if you have integration but you don't have gate 28, or until you get to gate 28, which is not part of integration, of course, that's individual, that the integration is purely self-centered, but it almost does double duty. And the moment you have 28, it's now personally, it cares about other people that are personal to it. And so it's like, it kind of, so there are some interesting, and this has come up a few times. So part of my deconditioning of my undefined head ajna is that despite wanting to establish some form of authority or so on, I just also try to limit actually looking for things. I'm always trying to get Mike to look things up. I was like, you should Google it, Mike. And then, because he has the defined head ajna, and if I can get him to do it, it's also a little bit of a check. Like if he'll do it, maybe it's worth thinking about. He has an innate sense of what's worth thinking about. I'll just think about anything. So I'm like, hey, Mike, is this worth thinking about? And he's like, then he's thinking about it. I kind of get on board, You have strong, conditioning in that sense. But okay, so we've looked at enough of these. These are great cards. Jenny, great work. Yay. Check out our website for it.
It's really exciting.
It is exciting. It's really fun. I've had a great time doing it. So we don't have a ton more time, but we have to show this because, Lindsay is so excited. And last week we apparently opened up a whole can of worms, a total can of worms. Would you hold up?
I'll hold it.
Yeah, just hold up what we got here. This is Love Cards. And this is a different book. I've never seen this.
This is the newer edition one.
Okay, so you actually
find.
No, it's probably better. It's probably updated and upgraded. And Robert Lee Camp, Love Cards. Yeah. So we were looking at this last week. So tell me about your card. What card are you? Maybe for today we'll just read our cards. We'll laugh about them a little bit and then we'll wrap it up. So we won't keep it super long. But
I'm the King of Diamonds.
The King of Diamonds.
Yeah. So I am the successful business person. Apparently, I have a lot of enemies, which is untrue. So that I know of.
You know. Yes, maybe.
But then my second life card is the, I think it's 4 of.
Second life card.
Yeah, your planetary card, which is also your second life. 4 of clubs, which I resonate with this one, which is...
Oh my god, the 4 of clubs just keeps coming up. This is my design date.
That's your design date?
So many, my dad's a 4 of clubs. I know so many 4s of clubs.
Mental satisfaction.
Yeah, I know all about the 4 of clubs.
So. It's really fascinating.
So when you're bringing up the lines down here.
Yeah, so when was your birthday? Yeah.
I'm 2 of diamonds. And I was curious about that section, so I'm happy.
Yes, because everyone with these birthdays are 2 of diamonds. So your planetary ruling card is like your second life.
The Jack of Spades.
Yeah.
Yeah, we looked at that one, and I know a few Jacks. The Thief, and I know a few Jacks of Spades. No, and they're not bad people. Like, none of these, like, everyone here, it's just like human design. You hear that your motivation's guilt, and you're like, oh my god. Or you hear that you're the Jack of Spades, the Thief. How cool. I mean, it's fun to play the Thief in an RPG. Why don't you want to have the Thief card for your, her planetary ruling card is the Thief. Well, what I'd like to do is actually read ours a little bit, and then also I know Marcus, if he's... Oh, they call it the actor, not the Thief. That's good. But no, I think it does have a kind of thievy kind of theme.
Cool.
And I know that Marcus Skond, who's watching or was watching earlier, is very adept in this, and I would love to, if you are watching, Marcus, I'd love to have you on as a guest talking about this stuff at some point. Leslie Winter. I just met somebody who may have these channels and is definitely a cross of the 4 ways. Oh, yeah, just about the channels we were talking about earlier. The cross of the 4 ways is my Saturn cross, by the way. But, yeah, let's just... So if anybody knows their birth card, post it, and we'll read it and talk about it. Oh, we got one. Okay. All right, Joyful Projector. What is the
327? Let's see here. It is the 9 of clubs.
Oh, I know a lot about 9 of clubs. Vaughn is a 9 of clubs.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A lot of like Jack Nicholson, Al Pacino, and Robert De Niro are 9 of clubs. This is the one that's so. You know what's so funny? I can tell you all about the 9 of clubs. I'm your karma card, Jen, and I, yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, real. That is a real coincidence, Leslie, about the 1333 and the 1949. That's funny that these gates both in the same chart. So for Jen's, I can just tell her a little bit about it from what I know because I've been reading about it. You have a debt to pay to me in this life that you can't really fully embrace your enlightenment until you pay off. Sorry, I'm your karma card.
That's a cool.
We're right next to each other. Yeah, maybe we can show this.
Yeah, the circle.
Oh my word! Can you?
Oh, that's the way to do it. Look at the other camera.
Yeah. So as you can see, the Nine of Clubs is right next to the Queen of Hearts. That's me. I'm the Queen of Hearts, and we're right next to each other. And because it goes that direction, I have a debt to pay the Ten of Spades, and you have a debt to pay me. So pay up. Joking. No, it's for you. It's so you can then see. I think Nine of Clubs is really. It's incredible, really. I mean, so clubs are fire, right? This is about fire at a fundamental level. Oh, you got to go? Okay. Bye. Well, bye, Mike. Thanks for being here. And so Nine of Clubs, we'll have to, when we get Mike next week, he loves going into elemental things and looking at the different elements and so on. But really this Nine of Fire, and here, I'll just read a second. Do you want to read from it?
Sure. I'll read this first paragraph. All right. The Nine of Clubs. This is a card of expanded consciousness. Those who have this birth card experience revelations about life and the truth behind what is going on here on Earth that few other cards do. These revelations come time to time when the Nine of Clubs person releases his or her attachment to some of their preconceived ideas and notions. It is also a card of negative thinking, and any individual of this birth card must let go of many negative mental patterns accumulated from past lives if they are to access the inherent power of this card. There are many who succeed in letting go, and many who reach the very heights of recognition through their work of giving knowledge to the world.
Yeah, I know. I've done a few. Yeah. Oh, I got it. I think she followed too. So, no. So I don't have my list with me here, but I know a lot of Nine of Clubs. It was interesting. There were definitely way more. I mean, it makes sense because I'm the Queen of Hearts, so we are next to each other on the karma wheel. But just a lot more. Oh, my good friend Oscar's Nine of Clubs, and yeah, it was interesting seeing it through that lens of. I think there's a part. If you'll continue, it's or we can. I remember it says. Let's see. The Queen of Hearts karma card, as well as the Two of Hearts in Venus, creates a highly sensuous side. Yeah, well, Queen of Hearts, what can I say? That's me. If their sensuous side is allowed to dominate, much time and energy is wasted that could otherwise elevate them to great accomplishment. Nine of Clubs is... Remember, this guy's a reflector, and he's also going to be conditioning you, so... The Nine of Clubs is here to end a major cycle in their soul's development. And I don't mean to say that about all reflectors, of course. That's my kind of... Ra calls them cosmic police force because they're here to enforce the program of, they're here to enforce the agenda. The Nine of Clubs is here to end a major cycle in their soul's development, a completion that should see them giving their wealth and knowledge to the world. There are some debts to be paid, especially to those with the Queen of Hearts card, and to their own families. But once those debts are paid, they can proceed with their cosmic task of enlightening the world. Financially, they don't do well in their own business. Oh, they do well in their own business if they don't let the pursuit of money spoil their spiritual values. Yeah, I see this with Von Paul. For those who are not familiar with his work, if you look up Von Paul artist on Instagram, he has incredible work, and he is very spiritually motivated. But I also think the way a lot of this is written is very personality agenda propaganda. Like, it's hard to read this and think that it's really... I mean, it's. I guess it's nice to hear like, oh, you should give up the sensuous side and be spiritually enlightened, be a nun. That's kind of like Robert Camp is kind of saying. I mean, and yet, why is he saying that? Well, because he is amplifying and enforcing the sort of Godhead agenda that says this is what is best for the totality. Doesn't care about individuality at all. and it's just very, homogenizing in that sense. Yeah. So, and there's a few of the people, right? They mentioned Jack Nicholson, Demi Moore, Al Pacino, and some other interesting ones. So, okay, well, let's read a couple more, and then we will call it. Unfortunately, we didn't get Mike on here to read his. His is the ace. Ace is always... Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, on which side, though? Do we know?
What do you mean?
In the wheel.
He owes me.
Oh, yeah. All right, now we're getting down to it. This is why we do this system. This is the system where you get to say, pay up. It's time. It's time. It's been enough lives, okay? This is the one. You got to do it. All right. Let's see if there's any more comments.
What's yours?
King of Diamonds.
Well, no, your karma card. Oh, look.
Yeah, my mom is one of them. She owed me.
3 of clubs and 7 of spades.
I don't think I've met a 7 of spades yet. Or I don't care.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. Jen says she can relate as a cross of service and not caring about money. Yeah. Well, that's I find a lot of defined egos don't care about money. No. We don't care about saving money. I'll tell you that. No, I'm joking. I'm an undefined ego. So, just a little side comment there. Which one are you reading about now? The King of Diamonds.
This is hers.
Yeah. Well, if you got as into human design as you got into this, I'm joking. This is amazing. All the notes,
I can read
great.
this.
Yeah. Well, and this, it's definitely.
The connections are what's really interesting to me.
The connections are great, and then I also do like seeing what cards end up in your life spread. And so, for instance, some cards, like I think it's like 3 of Diamonds, will have some really hard card. Like a Queen of Diamonds is like the hardest card.
Hard how?
Like, I don't know, the hardest card to have or something, or just like one of the most difficult cards. And that's like the first life. I don't know the details, but there's some that'll be in the life spread, and then also 7s can be really hard, and some will have multiple 7s in their life spread.
7s are special. And Scorpios are special in this. That's what they said in the...
Yeah.
I didn't read through it because I don't have a 7.
You don't have, but you might have a 7 in your life spread. I don't know.
I think in my karma cards I do.
Yeah, so it's really... This is just as deep, and shout out to Angelique if she's watching. Thanks for introducing me to this and getting me really into it. Angelique has been doing this for many, many years, and she was able to sit down and just look at me as a Queen of Hearts, and then talk about a few of and ask about some birthdays of people in my life and so on, and really quickly weave together some pretty intense stories. So, I mean, it's definitely the numerology of it is working at a level. It may not be 100% accurate. I mean, as I said last week, Ra asked the voice first of all, the purpose of tarot, and this is really kind of like the minor arcana of tarot. And the voice just said that it was incarnation sequencing, the sequencing of incarnations, but that it had been lost. The pattern had been lost. So maybe we kind of have the pattern, or maybe, who knows? I would love to hear from Marcus and others who have studied this as well, and hopefully we can have somebody on. Maybe I can get Angelique on here too, and it'd be really cool to just talk about it a little more and just go deeper into some of the numerology. I do really like learning about the aces as very yang, and then you learn about the 2 and it's very yin, and it's all about partnership, and then you learn about the 3 and it's very dynamic and kind of yang again. Like all of the odd numbers, and you get to 4, it's back to being yin, and you have these symmetries, and they all do kind of fundamentally. And also, we study human design. We study the personality and the design, the black and the red. Well, what else is black and red? What's always been the black and the red, right? It's the playing cards, kind of as at an early fundamental level. These absolutely, and also this doesn't require. Not that it has anything to do with you personally, but this doesn't require you to be awake in the sense that I was saying last week that the guy who showed me, was in the military for many years, not that that's anything about awakeness. There's plenty of people who are in any sort of life path, but he was just a very heavily conditioned, strictly regimented, very angry manifester. And you can tell when people are awake or not. And he just wasn't at all. And he was very adept. So, I mean, there are some systems, again, it's not a science of awakening, Angelique, oh my God, you're on here. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh.
Well, thanks for showing us
Literally
this.
just said it.
And I was just saying how, so you are somebody who I consider very, very awake, but also somebody who studies human design. I was first introduced to this. I was given an apartment because I'm a Queen of Hearts by he was a queen of something, I forget what, but a very, might have been the Queen of Diamonds, which I was just saying is such a difficult card. But in any case, this very like not self-angry person, I just know that, there's different sciences for different things. This is the science of incarnation. It's not the science of awakening. If you're awake, you can use it as an awake person will. And if you're fast asleep, you can use it as a fast asleep person would. Nothing's going to wake you up about it. We were just laughing with Mike earlier too about how there are some people who are really living their design but like fast asleep, and other people are waking up but freaking out about it and can't figure out how to live their design, and how the design and the personality really are separate. There's no guarantee that once you start to eat correctly and find yourself in your correct environment, all these things, that you'll wake up. And on the other hand, I don't think there's much chance of waking up otherwise, but you certainly can in certain ways, and then have that become its own prop or its own point of resistance, and so on. So, oh, it's not, okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, it's not, it's a different Angelique. It's just totally random.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know, I don't know either of your last names, so I apologize. I thought it was.
That would have been crazy.
Well, either way, it's a very pretty name, and thank you for tuning in. I think it's something to say.
Sorry, I fucked it up, but your name's great.
Excuse me. Well, anyway.
I just was like, whoa.
I was really surprised. I was like, Angelique's watching? What? Geez, I better be careful what I say. Here I am about, it doesn't wake you up, and it's a system that you can do when you're fast asleep. No, but all I mean by that is like, it's a different thing to really wake up to the realities of the Maya. Like, human design teaches you, hey, this is a stop sign. Normally, you should stop your car at the stop sign, don't run it. And everybody else is running it, and you're like, well, they're all running their signs. And you're like, yeah, but they're also getting wrecked. Like, you want to, like, be smart about the Maya. Like, one of Ra's favorite stories was of the story of the biblical Joseph, which I won't tell the whole thing, but basically, Joseph was the soldier who was off in the battle, and they won the battle, but the great prophets said, hey, we have to appease God by not eating anything and not pillaging and not doing all the, terrible stuff they do when they would win a battle for 24 hours. Well, Joseph didn't hear any of this, so he comes back chewing on a honeycomb, and he's found this honey, and he's like Winnie the Pooh, hey guys. Well, it's a very predictable outcome. There was no mercy because, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And this is one of Ra's favorite stories because of how terrible it is. Joseph ends up being put to death or something. It's the only thing they can do, right? It's terrible, but it's this Old Testament thing of the laws of the Maya are the laws of the Maya, and you break them at your own peril. And human design teaches you those laws of the Maya. And then you start to go, wow, just because everybody else is breaking them all the time, that's why their lives are constantly getting messed up in all these ways. And the second you stop breaking all these laws, you stop generating all this resistance, and your life stops being this unending series of unfortunate events, and you kind of get on this different track, and you actually start to wait long enough for your strategy to kick in, for your authority to kick in. So, do you have any comments on this? Or the twos? Okay, this is very. It's fundamentally yin. So you're the first yin then.
Yeah, and I mean it's interesting because I see so many parallels to the tarot. Like just reading this, even the first, talking about the two, the drive and the passion of the ace finds its complement and balance. Sexual energy in males and females finds balance in being with someone who is a complement to themselves. It is this balance achieved by finding our counterpart that twos are all about. Our world is a play of duality far more than most of us realize. Everything in our life is nothing more than the mishmash of opposites blended together to create all sorts of textures and colors and feelings and sounds and ideas that we call our living universe. Beautiful.
Wow.
Feliciano says he's Queen of Spades, and then but what is the PRC there, Feliciano? PRC King of Clubs.
Oh, it's the planetary ruler.
Oh, the planetary ruler. Okay, I see.
That's the second.
Yeah, it is a cool book, Leslie. Yeah, and it's definitely a lost art or semi-lost art, or Angelique says, I have a manifesting generator daughter 1-3 with the right angle cross of laws. She's firm on it. Love hearing this. Yeah, the cross of laws, you've probably heard this before, but people ask why it's the cross of laws if it's the 360, which is about mutation and anarchy and chaos and it's because, as Ra likes to joke, the 360 is who the laws are made for. Before they came along, there wasn't a law. People just assumed you don't jump in the table. And then somebody did it, some 360 did it, and so then Ra said, so he goes, okay, now we have to make it a law. You don't go on the table. You ever go to those places where they have like all these laws, you're like, who actually did this? Well, that was a 360. At some point in the past, a 360 somewhere was like, there's no law against it. Well, now there is, So that's why it's the cross of laws. So, yeah, planetary rulership. So, Feliciano, like me, is a queen, and, what's interesting is it seems like you get something by being a face card, but it almost, when you read about it, everybody has the face cards at their disposal. So when I go by Joey, I'm the Jack. And when I go by Mr. Dempsey, I'm the King. And normally I'm in my Queen of Hearts role. And normally, but the funny thing is everybody has these face card roles that they can draw from. And some of the cards gain and some lose. Some cards, like that 9 of clubs, is so cool. You don't need to go into your face card. You can just be that 9 of clubs or whatever if you are, But other cards, they gain so much by playing up their face card. Also, their face card may be in their life spread, and so then they're kind of going into their Mars or going into their Venus or going into that face card. So it's interesting. Or maybe I actually that last part, I don't know if any of the same suit face cards on the life spread. I haven't confirmed that. I haven't gone deep enough, so that may not be true. But in any case. It is, let me remove these spams again. Thanks for everybody watching, for putting up with all this. But, yeah, we got it. But the thing with being a face card is it's almost like being left angle where I felt a little bit robbed. When he talks about it, he's like, well, everyone gets to go into their face card. If you're a face card, you're nothing but the face card, right? It's almost like I'm nothing but the mask. What's underneath, it's just the face card. So I don't know if that's exactly accurate. I'd be curious to hear from others who know this system better if that's the case. I also found it really interesting that I've had 2 businesses, one that was highly successful and then one that kind of crashed and burned. But both of them, or neither of them, really worked out in my favor. One was we were 3 queens. It's me with the Queen of Clubs and with the Queen of Diamonds, I think. And that was the one where so the 3 queens really took off. And then the other was me and 2 4s of clubs, which, as I mentioned earlier, is my both my design date as well as, the least compatible and the most difficult card in the entire deck for me in terms of the ratings that he gives. And it's the Saturn Pluto to me. It's and it's also my dad's card. It's also John David Ebert. Some people who might remember John David Ebert is a YouTuber who completely publicly freaked out on me and had a multi-day meltdown about me, and we're no longer friends. But yeah, some people. Well, I had booked him for a show because he really wanted. First, we were trying to get Zizek, and then what's up?
He doesn't have hair.
Yeah, he does not have hair. Yeah, we were trying to get Zizek, and then we didn't get Zizek because this was before COVID. And then he's like, "Well, I'll do the talk," and I'm like, "Okay, what do you want to do a talk on?" And he's like, I'll do it on ancient Mesopotamian burial rituals and burial rituals from the, and he's a brilliant scholar. He's great. I mean, like a lot of clubs, I guess, probably. And I was like, sure, let's do it. But, no one's going to come. And he's like, oh, no, they'll come. I have fans all over. And so we charged $10 a ticket, and we sold 9 tickets and made $90 and ended up having, I paid a couple $100 just to rent the space. And he was just so mad afterwards. And we went out, and he was wanting, I don't want to go to the whole story, but this is my 4 of clubs experience, just, and I have other friends, we have good friends who are 4 of clubs, people I'm on much better terms with, so I would never want a system like this to introduce prejudice into how you treat anybody. But it's interesting to see how one side of Saturn went with that, and how he was a very Saturnine force for me. But yeah, it's interesting when you see certain ones come up again and again and again. So, all right, where are we now? We're in this is mine.
This is yours, yeah.
Great. So, what are you looking at?
Well, I was looking at the celebrity birthdays.
I know most of the celebrity birthdays
Goldie
just because
Will Smith. Well, Will Smith has your same birthday.
Well, a lot of people are on the 925, and I'm actually the 8 of Diamonds rulership, the PRC, So I'm a Queen of Hearts with 8 of Diamonds PRC. So, and then I can look at the life spread. It's kind of cool to see some of the cards that show up there. Like my planetary ruling card makes perfect sense. Venus, Libra is ruled by Venus. That's why it's 8 of Diamonds. It's from the life spread. And you can kind of see.
Yeah.
And I have a 3 of Hearts in there. I have an Ace of Clubs. That's the Saturn there. I have a Queen of Clubs and so on. So yeah, I do like the system a lot. And I'm hoping to go, to find what you are. Angelique asks, how do you find it? You can find it on Robert Lee Camp's website. You can type it in and he'll tell you. He doesn't give you that much information for free, but I'll just... Oh, well, I don't know how to find that, but you can definitely, so Robert Lee Camp, let me...
If you just Google.
Yeah, if you just
Love
Google...
Cards, Robert Camp.
Yeah, Robert Camp Love Cards, you'll find it. This is his name here, Robert Lee Camp. And you'll find his homepage, and he has, he's a reflector. He's not into human design at all. Thanks for Marcus for pointing that out. And, it's definitely, it can be a mind candy system for sure. As people in human design community like to say, it's very mind candy. But if you're interested in past lives, and if you're interested, I don't know how practical it is. I'd be curious to hear from others who've used it for a longer period of time. Like, for instance, the guy who gave me an apartment because I'm a Queen of Hearts. Terrible. I mean, it's a great example of like no inner authority at all. It's literally just 100% trusting some outer authority to make decisions for you, going, literally this stranger is a Queen of Hearts in the system, so I'm going to give this guy an apartment. It doesn't make any sense. It didn't work out. He hated me. I was the worst tenant.
Wait,
because I was
just
too
knew
loud.
That you were a Queen of Hearts, so
he asked me for my he had a Craigslist, and then he said he wanted everyone's birthday to find out. He's a healer and shamanic ritual guy, and not to cast aspersions against shamanism, but this guy was kind of a neo-shamanistic touch healer Navy dude. And
so in the Craigslist ad,
well, no, when I talked to him, he said, okay, well, I'm definitely interested. I'm interested. I do this mystical system with cards. Would you tell me, this over email or something? Would you email me your birthday? I don't even need the year. I just need the birthday. Or I don't know what he said. Maybe he wants the year too. But I did. I said, oh, sure, no problem. 9/25/83. It's like, what could a scammer do with just a birthday? Nothing, hardly. It's not like he asked me for my social or anything. And we may have. He sent me his website first or something. We'd had some interaction. He sent me a website where I could book a reading with him and all this stuff. I'm like, okay, this guy's into shamanic stuff, whatever. And he's in his 70s. He's been doing this stuff for years and years and years. And as soon as he did it, he goes, oh, you're in. I asked my guides, and they said, they said the Queen of Hearts, and I know I've known other Queen of Hearts, and we're just going to be perfect. And, I guess it wasn't that bad overall, but the main difficulty was that he lived in the back, and it's just a really loud place, and he would just start being annoyed if, like, I turned on anything after 8 p.m., or if I was using, the stove beeping or something would be annoying.
No.
And so I just told him, get a fan and get some earplugs. And, it was quiet before you moved here. Well, it was empty before I moved there. It's a really fun system. Don't use it to make decisions. Use your strategy and authority to make decisions, please. So hopefully we can go into it more next week. Thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thanks
Lindsay, for
all.
getting the book. Any final passing comments? Yeah, I think we're good. So thanks everyone for watching, and until next time.
Have a great night.
Yeah.
Or day.